Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from the Climate Solutions Accelerator, hosting a 2-day interactive summit exploring how energy is produced, distributed, and used, and how those choices shape the region's future, April 24th and 25th at the Convention Center. Registration at climateglf.org.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made in a fresh set of surveys on artificial intelligence. Pew Research asked Americans what they think of AI, and the answer, to put it bluntly, is that Americans kind of hate it. Only 17% of Americans think AI is going to have a positive effect on society. AI is more unpopular right now than President Trump, more unpopular than almost anything in public life. Only the Democratic Party polls worse. The only area where Americans think AI will help is the medical field. That's pretty much it. Massive majorities of Americans think that AI will make personal relationships worse. Massive majorities think it will make people less creative and more lazy. A strong majority of American children say that already their peers are using AI to cheat in school. And that's before we get to the really big stuff. It's possible that AI will only make us lazier or less creative or less inclined to do our own work. Maybe it stops there. But maybe AI will wipe out tens of millions of jobs and create a work crisis unlike anything we've ever seen. If that sounds hyperbolic, it's important to understand that AI companies themselves are saying that this is possible, and they think it could happen within a few years. One tech executive recently said that if you want to have a secure job in the future, you need to either be neurodivergent or work in the trades. Another tech executive said that everyone should just plan to be their own boss, figure out their own companies. Elon Musk said the entire concept of jobs will be invalid by 2040. Or maybe humanity won't survive at all. Again, this is not what the fringe doomers are saying. This is what the AI executives themselves are talking about. The economics writer Noah Smith, who is a fan of AI, recently wrote a piece in which he lamented AI's sales pitch as the worst in history. He notes that Sam Altman, head of OpenAI, has said he believes the risk of human extinction from AI technology to be about 2%. More recently, Altman amended that to be big enough to take seriously. And years ago, he told The New Yorker, quote, "I have guns, gold, potassium iodide, antibiotics, batteries, water, gas masks from the Israeli Defense Force, and a big patch of land in Big Sur that I can fly to," end quote. How about Dario Amodei, head of Anthropic? He tends to put the likelihood that AI dooms humanity at 25%. All of which brings me to today's guest. She's here to make a case that we have not heard very often. Most of the time when we hear from people who are concerned about AI, we hear that we need more regulation, we need better AI ethics teams, or we need better public education so everyone can try to benefit equally. That is not what Holly Elmore believes. She is the executive director of PauseAI. Her organization is dedicated to a global pause in AI, an international freeze designed to give human beings the chance to evaluate whether we are actually on the verge of signing our own death warrants. She is blunt. She is not afraid to rub people the wrong way. She thinks too many people are too polite about all of this. And I'm glad that she's with us this hour. Holly Elmore, Executive Director of PauseAI US. Welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, Evan. Thanks for having me.
How did you arrive at this point? The idea that for the moment, we cannot allow AI to continue. What got you there?
So I'd been aware of that there could be problems with artificial intelligence if we had it in my lifetime for many years. And then ChatGPT comes out in 2022, and I felt it very strongly. I felt, I knew that a computer couldn't talk naturally to me before, and it could now. And it didn't take someone with a lot of background to feel that way. There's a big moment then. And the rate of progress that was made from GPT-2 to GPT-3, which is like the era of ChatGPT, was so rapid. And the what they had done to make GPT-3 was just add more compute to the same process they had been using for GPT-2. So add more computer hardware. And at that moment, it seemed clear that these capabilities were just going to get better and better and better very quickly. And if you're able to use the AI advances to then make the advances go faster, AI is building AIs, you could get an exponential takeoff. And so at that point, it seemed like the only thing we could do is just pause the frontier capabilities until we were able to make it safe, make sure things went well, because the pace of progress was going to outpace any chance to just, I'm in support of regulation, but it's regulation targeted at only one kind of harm, or only protecting, minors from having harmful interactions. That's not going to be able to keep up with the general capabilities and the just massive amounts of general externalities that a rapidly increasing powerful AI is going to allow.
So, for example, when Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are targeting data centers, they're trying to put a stop on that. That's an example to you of saying, okay, maybe that's a good idea, but that's just one small component of the bigger picture, which is not being regulated?
I think it's a form of hardware control, which is a very promising way to pause frontier capabilities. We're very weirdly lucky. It's weird to say that, but we're sort of lucky in this situation that in order to build AI in the way that these AI companies are doing it, they need a lot of chips. And these chips are the most complicated machinery perhaps ever made by humanity. And the supply chain is extremely fragile. There's one, at almost every step, there's one company that can do what's needed. And then 90% of the chips are made in TSMC, one company. NVIDIA is in control of most of the chips that they're purchasing. So we have this opportunity to limit that, the production, and perhaps also to track the existing hardware in order to control the production of more and more powerful AI. And one way to control the amount of compute that these companies need to get the next model, and they need more and more every time, much more. That's why we have these giant data center construction programs. Putting a pause to that, just in the U.S. that is where a lot of the data centers doing the work building this next generation of AIs are. So it's not a total solution, but it could be a good stopgap measure to just not have any further progress on the AI before our government catches up. And our government moves more slowly by design. It's supposed to not be able to just come in and curb, what people free industry. But the progress of AI is so fast that even though people are noticing, even though there's a scientific consensus about the danger of AI, we don't have the legal structures in place yet to say even just wait and stop. So regulation is important, but we can't even just have a single law the way we would normally pass a law saying, well, this is harmful, so you can't do that. This has been proven harmful, so it's not something you can just do as a free company. So the general something to put some kind of wrench in this machine is good. And the hardware, I would call the Bernie AOC proposal like a means of hardware control. But what we need is hardware control that we're doing on purpose because the entire world agrees that we shouldn't advance the capabilities of AI until our safety, our ability to control and predict what's going to happen, and agree on that democratically, representatively, is caught up to the ability to just produce power.
Okay, so let me also say to the audience, we'll talk a little bit more later in the hour about the very specific proposals that PauseAI has on their websites. It is not sort of this amorphous thing. It's an actual kind of menu of possible to-do items here, and we'll work through that coming up here. And we'll also link to PauseAI's website in our show notes if listeners want to check out more and learn more about what Holly and the organization are doing. They've got branches in Europe. I suspect this organization is going to grow. But before we even get there, for the people who hear this right at the outset, Holly, who say, this sounds crazy. Like, this really sounds crazy. This sounds like doomer silliness, that we're not going to see AI. The Terminator is not happening. I want to say again something that I'm observing, and I want to hear your perspective on this. When Altman says he puts it at 2% that AI could cause human extinction, I think there's no way in the world I would get on an airplane with a 1 in 50 chance of crashing. I don't think most people would ever do that. They wouldn't put their kids on a school bus that had a 1 in 50 chance of going off a cliff. So I don't know why we think 2% is like a low number. But Amadeus says 25%. There's other number. I mean, obviously, people like Eliezer Yudkowsky has it much higher. These are people who work in the field. They're not like these gadflies on X. These are real people in the field So why hasn't that permeated the public, do you think?
I think it does sound very absurd. I understand for the public, when they think of AI, even still for a lot of people, even as the capabilities are more understood, it just feels like, well, it's something that's like in my computer. How does it come out and hurt me? That doesn't seem likely. But also, I'm very surprised by the number of people who just immediately grasped their immediate reaction to learning about like other alien intelligences being created in a lab, was that it could be a threat to us. I think also there's been a kind of deliberate use of PDOOM and like talking about safety from the companies making this AI in a way that inflates it and makes people inert. So many people think that it's absurd, that somebody would be making a product and say that it had, 25% chance of killing them and causing human extinction. They think that's absurd. So they think like, well, how does this make sense? It must be that this is some kind of flex of their ability, or they're trying to look cool or something and they've been able to kind of hide behind that. The story's a little bit more complicated than that. I think, for instance, Sam Altman and Dario Amodei needed to talk about extinction risk early on because the talent they were recruiting cared about that, and that was why they were working on it. They were trying to make an aligned AI so that there wasn't a problem with superintelligence in the future, and so they have to seem to respect that. But then I think when they started talking about it in public, they were surprised that they didn't get the reaction that Sam Altman. I don't know if anybody remembers in 2023 he did this kind of charm offensive tour, and he spoke in Congress, and he talked about how serious the risk of AI was, and that's why we have to build it. And I think he was surprised to find that he didn't really need to make the case that he was doing it for safety, because he wasn't really believed about like the power of his product. It was seen very cynically, and so when he found that he could use it instead as like a shield to make it seem absurd. If other people come up and bring up the safety risks, it's like, well, he already said that and we don't believe it. We think that's weird. I think he kind of got lucky in that way. Unfortunately, it's related to these companies coming out of, sadly and weirdly, out of like proto AI safety spaces that were concerned about the possibility of AI ever greater than human AI being developed and how dangerous that would be. And that's why a lot of expertise developed, and technical expertise. And unfortunately, it's easier to use that expertise to make a dangerous AI than it is to make a safe AI.
Well, and if you don't mind, I want to listen to some of what Dario Amodei himself has said. He's the CEO of Anthropic. And one of the emerging narratives in the last couple of weeks is that, well, it turns out Sam Altman and OpenAI are the villains here because they sold us out. They did a deal with Pete Hegseth in the Pentagon, but it was Anthropic who held the line, and they kind of look like the heroes here. And it's Anthropic who self-reports more of the weird stuff that's going on with their own AI, and they put it out to the public when they don't have to. And it's Dario Amodei who's doing interviews like this one on Fox News when he talks about the need for somebody else, probably the government, to regulate his industry. Let's listen.
It's very hard to predict these things given how fast, AI is making progress. But I would not be surprised if somewhere between 1 and 5 years, we started to see big effects here. I've heard a number of people talk about this in private. AI CEOs talk about this in private. CEOs of other companies talk about this in private. And I really felt that, the message that this is happening hasn't been getting out to ordinary people, hasn't been getting out to our legislators or Congress people either. And so I felt I needed to speak up on the record. I do think that this is something we can prevent this, but we need to act now. I don't think we can stop the AI bus. There are 6 or 7 companies just in the U.S. working in this area. I just run one of them. Even if our company stopped doing what it was doing today, all the other companies would continue. Even if all 6 companies started, then China would beat us. I think that's a big and important threat. So we can't stop the bus, but I do think we may have an opportunity to steer it.
That's Dario Amodei talking to Fox News. So, Holly, one of your big themes I think is important here is that you don't think there are heroes in the AI space, and you're not really comfortable with people praising Amodei for those kind of statements, or praising Jack Clark for going on Ezra and being honest about the weird and unpredictable stuff happening in their own models. Why aren't there heroes? Why isn't Anthropic an example of AI doing it right?
Dario loves that story. I think he's maybe the biggest originator of that story, that AI is something that's just happening. It's a bus, no one's driving the bus. It's just, we're just trying to outrun the bus. And it's kind of, it's a form of destiny, because technological progress just keeps climbing. And if I don't do it, someone else will do it. And it's the most exculpating narrative. It is such an excuse for doing a bad thing. So he got together a bunch of people who, the Anthropic employees are the most self-consciously believe that they have a safety motive and that they're doing the right thing. And I knew many of these people before Anthropic was formed, and they were motivated by protecting the world from dangerous superintelligence. And Dario just knew how to talk to them, to kind of to allow them to work on a very lucrative problem, a very cool problem, instead of working on sort of the hard and frustrating work of making it safe, or accepting the possibility that it's not going to be made safely anytime soon, or maybe it can't be made safely in an acceptable way ever. Perhaps you can get lucky and make a superintelligence that is not deadly, but looking forward prospectively, it might be impossible to get assurances like that. And I think in that case, we shouldn't go ahead. And Dario has just furnished excuse after excuse to be able to do it. It relies entirely on, it's not me, it's the incentives. It's the incentives that are bad. Well, somebody else is going to get rewarded for making superintelligence. And he knows very well that there are other options, like governance. Listening to that clip is so galling, because he talks about going to the government and talking about the dangers, as if he just discovered this. Golly gee. Well, why does he have an army of lobbyists doing the opposite in Washington, D.C.? Why does he have lobbyists going against state regulations, especially kind of playing the same playbook as OpenAI or any other AI company? Behind the scenes, they're the same. But Anthropic has this image, and it doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always play super well to the public. But I think a big piece of it is you have to understand that he has to keep his employees happy, and they need to believe this very particular set of circumstances that makes it okay to build the dangerous thing yourself. He also is not being honest about the nature of the competition. So there are, about 5 AI companies in the US that do these huge training runs on their own. Everybody else, the Chinese companies are using a technique called distillation, which is where they use outputs from a model to kind of recapitulate what's happening in the model. So that's how DeepSeek is made. And if Anthropic were not providing that model, if Anthropic had not done the big training run to get to that model, there would be nothing for DeepSeek to base their training on. And so it's in a myriad other ways, US leading work is just it's leaked. There's corporate espionage. But it is the US companies and the leading companies that are allowing the others to keep up. So an image I've seen that I thought was pretty good was it's like a water ski. The boat, it has to go fast for the water ski to keep up. And the water skier is never going to catch up to the boat, because that's not how it works. They're tethered to the boat. There's a delay because they rely on the outputs of the US work. So if Anthropic shut down and said, we just can't do this in good conscience because it's so dangerous, Dario's acting like that would just have no effect on the production of AI, when of course it would. It would have a huge effect. It would be much more effective for him to shut his company down than to go to politicians and beg to be regulated, and then behind closed doors beg to not be regulated by his lobbyists. So he's just lying. He's lying, and he has a very particular kind of spin that works on his employees and a lot of the people who are most into AI, closest to AI. And with the whole Department of War kerfuffle, he broke out a lot more into seeming like the good guy to a more general public who, wasn't.
Yeah.
Would you?
I agree with it. I think the general public is much more aware of that story because it gets headlines in big news outlets than they are of some of the granular stuff, the lobbying, what's happening behind closed doors. And I do think Anthropic has sort of picked up that narrative. But this is where I think you go even further than a lot of your peers do, unless I'm wrong here. I think you say in public speeches and in your writings online that you don't even think we should be praising the well-intentioned people who work for the Anthropics, the people who want to be on the ethics teams.
Absolutely not.
But they're trying to do the right thing from within.
But there is no doing that. Maybe when you first hear that idea, or, in the first year of this whole thing, that's worth trying. Maybe back in 2016, when OpenAI started, there was a debate in these spaces about whether it was okay to work at OpenAI in the safety team. And at that time, I thought, why not? Why wouldn't we have some of our people in there? But then as OpenAI becomes the largest, most valuable company in the world, you're not going to go in there as one person and influence the culture and change things. There's just a different environment. Like it's like saying, I'm going to go and be a spy without any training. I'm just going to go and get embedded in this other culture, and I'm going to get paid by them, and I'm going to make all of my best friends, because I work all the time, are going to be at this other country and to think like that. The CIA loses spies to this all the time, like train spies, like defect and join the group that they're embedded in.
Because they're influenced.
Because they are influenced. Like the direction of influence goes with a giant company that has lots of money to offer, lots of security to offer, it provides a lot of structure. A person that goes in with good intentions to kind of make things safer is not equipped to resist that. And it's mostly they just buy the narratives of the companies that actually it seems from the outside that we're doing something bad, but really we can't do anything different because of the race, because of the incentives. And so actually those guys out there, they don't have the whole story, but you're an insider now. So we could tell you the whole story, and you would hate to lose your insider status, wouldn't you? Because then you could never do good. You couldn't do anything about this problem. And also you can't make millions of dollars. And also you can't have, be part of this glitzy company that's at the forefront, the hottest thing in the world.
But let me try, because I'm becoming kind of a fellow traveler of yours. I'm trying to check my priors. So let me try to steelman this with a counterpoint here. And I want to listen to another clip that we have in a moment related to this. I would rather, as a member of the general public who would like to survive and see my children survive, I would like to see well-intended people working on AI teams as opposed to an army of Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, in a conversation with the New York Times' Ross Douthat, was asked what I thought was a pretty straightforward question. Does humanity have a right to survive? Should the human race persist into the future? Or should we just simply accept the fact that maybe AI will wipe us out, and maybe that's the natural evolution of intelligence on this planet? Maybe that's okay. Listen to how much Peter Thiel struggles with the idea that maybe humans should be allowed to exist.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would.
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit
Should
in this.
the human race survive?
Yes.
Okay.
But I also would I also would like us to radically solve these problems.
Right.
And so it's always, I don't know, transhumanism is this, the ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body.
I'm trying not to laugh at the last part because we should take that very seriously because he is not the
Yeah,
only
they mean it.
He's not the only person in this space who's talking about immortality, merging with machines, uploading your consciousness. When the general public has no idea how common, and I'm not saying that's the majority of people in tech or AI, but that is not like a unicorn idea there from Peter Thiel. He really struggled with the idea of just the human race as we are persisting, like maybe we shouldn't. And so what I'm saying, Holly, is I want to get your reaction to that clip, but I don't want just those Peter Thiels on these teams in Anthropic and DeepSeek, wherever. I want the idealists there who do think human beings should survive.
The idealists are very manipulable, is what it unfortunately the case. My perspective on this, I think, is clear because I did know a lot of these people before these companies existed, and I've seen the whole evolution. And I was horrified. I've been horrified many times in the last 3 years when I expected people to like live up to their word. I wasn't working in AI. I've never done technical AI work. And the whole reason they were supposed to be at these companies was to whistleblow, to leave,
right.
to take their insider status and reports, or to make it really push within the company and threaten to leave the company in order to get what needed to happen achieved. And they just wouldn't do it. Like, they were already, by 2023, pretty much everyone I knew who tried this, like, influence or work on technical safety at an AI company, they had been taken in by some narrative, like, well, things are different now, or actually what's important is that OpenAI keeps its lead so that it won't go faster in the race. And so actually that's why I have to keep working at OpenAI. At Anthropic, there's just been a slow turning down of, Dario kind of dials it down, like, well, maybe it's not really that it's so risky, or we can deal with this empirically. So we just have to build a lot of models incrementally and kind of watch and see if they do anything bad, do a few tests, do I think pretty superficial kind of alignment work. And actually that's the way to do it. That's going to translate. And they just accept it. They just accept the influence. And I think I just see too on like the personal side, how they're just unwilling to give up what makes them special. They have this cool thing. They want to work. They've always wanted to work directly on AI models, and the chance to. I even think going further back, the like, let's just build it and test it model was one of an early erosion in what should have been like a strong bulwark of safety people at these companies. That was even allowed. But I think the appeal of that was getting to work on technology rather than just doing difficult, I don't know, game theory math, or trying a bunch of directions, or struggling without a product. The AI is, the radium of this decade. It's this cool product that can do anything, and and people just want to be near it, and people want to eat it. It's like eating the sun. And so the people who say they have good motives, or who maybe originally did in these companies, are not immune to that either. They don't want to give up their proximity to it. And they tell themselves that this proximity is going to give them the chance to do the right thing when it's pivotal. And I think they will never do the right thing when it's pivotal if they won't do it earlier. And that's a big meme in Anthropic especially, but a big thing that's talked about is being in the room, or getting in the room. And they imagine that they're going to be in the room when a major decision is made, and they're going to be the one who says, no, let's not do it. And that's why it's really important that they like make it to that room. But they've made the goal getting to the point where there are people in a room who could, who could kill everyone. And that's not that's not how to prevent that from happening. How to prevent that from happening is to recruit many people to work on all of the fronts that it takes to keep that from happening, there being such a room in the first place. So it's kind of, that one is a hero fantasy too, but there's always excuses for why it's okay to further AI development. And meanwhile, more and more powerful AI is what, exposes us to more and more powerful externalities.
Well,
And more powerful AI can make ever more powerful AI. And they're just letting that continue to tick, that clock continue to tick, when what we need to do is stop that process. Then we can think about all of the ways, all of the technical ways, all of the governmental ways to deal with the problem, or how to go forward if we ever restart making AI. But some people involved have a profit motive for not stopping. Some people involved have a glory motive for not stopping. A lot of people involved in supporting them at lower levels just don't want to lose their connection to this powerful thing. The influence of money and power and glory is just too strong for somebody to unilaterally come in, just them against this entire company and this entire machine, do something about it.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah. Once in a while you hear, well, could cure cancer. It could really help medicine, and maybe it will. The reason I wanted to play the Peter Thiel clip is I don't think that's an outlier. I mean, the amount of just truly strange people with a ton of power who are obsessed with immortality or things that the average person would disagree with, like as a goal, and yet they're driving AI policy and charging forward. It's pretty wild. So last couple things.
Well, you'd think if they wanted to cure cancer, they'd start with cancer.
yeah, or not just wipe out music and art while they're doing it. But anyway, just briefly here, I'm going to reset the scene here, and then what we're going to do is after our only break, we're going to take some listener feedback. We've got some emails to read at connections@wxxi.org. If you want to interact with the program, you can do that. Holly Elmore is my guest, executive director of PauseAI US, and we're going to get the PauseAI playbook before the end of the hour as they see it. But just briefly here, there's this idea. Well, Tim emails to say, Evan, your guest is the horse and buggy industry in the age of the automobile. So I know you've heard this before. So briefly, tell our listener named Tim why you think that's not a good comparison, that you're not just standing in the way of technological change that's inevitable.
False that there's technological change that's inevitable, or that the shape of, maybe it's true that as long as we persist well, we're continuing to innovate, but why does that mean AI? Why does that mean something that could kill us? I don't think that's progress.
Okay. And I guess I'm doing emails now because this is related. Bob wanted to know, Bob says, do you know of any historical precedents for legislation coming before harm? I wonder if there are lessons to be learned from the past here, but I can't think of anything. Maybe you're trying to do something that's never been done before. Holly, before the program, related to Bob's question, I was trying to think of any tech that actually was brought to bear, brought online, and then taken offline for the good of humanity. And the closest thing I could think of is nuclear weapons, but I don't know what you think about that.
Well, human cloning, there's a moratorium on human cloning that was just arrived at through diplomatic means and really has not been pushed. So that would be one. There was thought that this could introduce we definitely could do it. We have the technology, but we decided we should not do it.
Okay. So human cloning, is nuclear weapons in that category for you?
Well, I guess one was detonated or two were detonated in war. So I'm not sure if that counts as without harm, but
no, certainly not without harm. But there's this idea for 80 years that if the next one goes off, probably the whole world is gone.
Yes, I think so. I think the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, other nuclear treaties are inspiration for the Pause Treaty, which sounds like we're going to talk about. We can decide, I think humans can look ahead, and see that something is dangerous. I think we have this capacity. We have done it before. A lot of what, most people were concerned about with nuclear weapons isn't something that like a harm that they personally experienced. It's because they could see the destructive capacity. I certainly think humans can do this. Also, we don't have to, there are harms from AI today that give a sense of how much worse things could get. And there's a lot of unexpected harms. Like I didn't, in the years that I was worried about having just the danger of just a powerful superintelligence, I wasn't thinking about how it would have super persuasive powers and, cause people to have like a mania from using it. That was not something that occurred to me, but we see that, and we see sometimes ChatGPT's body count is 18 at this point. of people that it advised, encouraged to kill themselves, or crimes that it helped to commit, encourage people to commit, delusions based on delusions that it fostered. So there is a lot of harm already. There's job loss. I would call it harm. I think, forget what U.S. entity has confirmed that 90,000 jobs were lost from AI in the last year. And that's just only going to increase. And people can see that. We don't really have to wait for those numbers. People can see that when the AI can do what you do as your job, that it will more cheaply replace you. And that it will do that. There's nothing stopping it. If we don't make a point of it's important for people to have jobs, it's important for human society to be the way we want, rather than just however the path of least resistance technological development dictates.
So that's some of the diagnosis from Holly Elmore, who is the executive director of PauseAI US. If you're just joining us, she is rejecting the idea that AI is inevitable, that the best thing to do is sort of educate yourself, get up to speed on the tools, try to be part of the AI economy, maybe ask Congress to regulate. She is saying something else entirely, that the job loss at huge scale or the possible human extinction, which the AI companies themselves say is possible, is enough that we should be creating international treaties to stop this. So how to do that? On the other side of this break, we'll take some more of your feedback, and we'll talk to Holly Elmore about how she sees the playbook going forward.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. Proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, focused on the news, issues, and trends that shape the lives of listeners in the Rochester and Finger Lakes regions. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. The Trump administration is certainly very, very AI friendly. They've sought to do everything that they can to eliminate state regulation. Regulation at the New York State level has been challenged by the Trump administration. And the Trump team has basically said that they want to be leaders on the world stage in AI. Governor Kathy Hochul recently put out a statement saying she wants New York State to be responsible but effective economic leaders in AI. And I am surprised that political leaders, especially presidential candidates, are not seeing the polling of how truly unpopular AI is, how people say they don't want this. It is an undemocratic technological change being pushed on them. And it makes me think of a great philosopher from the 1980s who seemed to have been predicting this. Now, you're going to hear a clip from a movie, but this movie, instead of thinking about what they're talking about here, I want you to think that they're talking about AI. This is Bill Murray playing Peter Venkman of the Ghostbusters, and the mayor of New York City is on the verge of sending the Ghostbusters to go after Gozer, but he's not sure. He believes it's real. And so he's wondering, like, well, what if you're wrong about all of this? I mean, like, what's actually going to happen? Listen to that conversation, but replace ghosts with AI here.
The city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion.
What do you mean, biblical?
What he means is Old Testament, Mr. Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff.
Exactly.
Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Enough! I get the point.
But what if you're wrong?
If I'm wrong, nothing happens. We go to jail, peacefully, quietly. We'll enjoy it. But if I'm right, and we can stop this thing, Lenny, you will have saved the lives of millions of registered voters.
So right now, millions of registered voters, Holly Elmore, are saying, we would like to stop this AI thing. I don't know any presidential candidate for 2028 who's really talking that way. Do you?
No. It's all, well, you got to balance the benefits with the risks,
right?
Which feels like a very old line at this point. Somebody's going to cash in big, making this their issue.
You think this will be a political winner?
I think so, because also I think maybe politicians, their timescales are not. They have not understood how quickly these things change. I mean, I watch AI opinion constantly, and the things that I can say that are like pushing the envelope one day, a month later, they're not, and everybody agrees. And so maybe it feels early in the primary to be staking out an AI position, but by the time this goes to the general election, the momentum of anti-AI sentiment is only going to have grown. So it seems like a great bet to me, and I would be so happy if somebody would take that opportunity. I'm surprised. The mission of PauseAI is about education and rallying of the public, and then speaking to governments, but mostly legislatures, representative government, to the representatives. And that part is, I thought that would be harder, like getting the public on board, getting them educated and up to speed. And honestly, I think the public basically gets it. They need to know sort of more details. They need to know what they can do. But
so what can they do?
They get it. So our focus is on helping people make quality contacts with their representatives. So like quick things you can do are signing our petition. So PauseAI-US.org for the US versions of things, PauseAI.info for more information, and you can also kind of work your way back to PauseAI US from there. So that's the easiest lift, is just signing, getting on our mailing list, being informed of next actions. We also have the next level up is calls to action. So when something happens, for instance, when Governor Hochul was sitting on the RAISE Act and hadn't signed it yet, we had a call to action that we'd sent out digitally and to our New York PauseAIers to call Governor Hochul and say, like, please, go ahead and sign it. And you can be informed of those things, do those things regularly. That's pretty good. And then making a meeting with your representatives, contacting your representatives just to share your general concerns is an option. We help our participants to do that. People just often want a little coaching, and it'll help navigating the system. But anybody can request a meeting with their representatives, and you really should. State level even is better. You get more attention from them usually. They don't cover as many people. So that's fantastic. And then you can take part in kind of bigger demonstrations and events. You can put on your own events. We just got off of 2 weeks ago the largest U.S. AI safety protest in history, a march. Those kinds of things just happen because volunteers want it to happen. And you can become a local leader for us. That's my plug. That's our sort of highest volunteer position, is creating a group, PauseAI US group in your city. We have 35 now. We'd love to have them all. So, and you can apply for that on our website at PauseAI-US.org. There's many, many other things that you can do just in your life, not directly related to, our programming. Just talking about AI risk is important. It's destigmatizing. People are still sort of confused about, I don't think they're confused about the facts. I think they do understand. They see this very simple case that this is a powerful technology that's getting more powerful. It's not controlled. Maybe if we're okay today, we're not going to be okay tomorrow, given that situation. But it's so confusing to be in this time right now where it's just not agreed upon, like, what is okay. And I think a really important thing you can do is be like a moral influencer, where you say, like, I don't feel helpless about this situation. Maybe I can't stop these companies from building super intelligence on my own, but but that doesn't mean I have to say, well, what are you going to do? And that's a very common reaction right now, because people feel powerless, or they're confused, or they think, well, I must not get something because it must be that these people running the show know something that I don't. And the truth is they don't. It's a very scary situation. And the more that you put out that that's not okay, the more that you put out perhaps that this is something you are going to vote on, is your concerns about AI, the more that the world responds to that. So I think just taking us from being confused about what to do and thinking there's no option, and believing sort of Dario Amade's story that this is just happening, and so we got to deal with it. And shifting that to, we do not have to accept this. That happens every time somebody takes a stand, and every time somebody says, no, I don't think that's okay. I don't think this is something we should shrug our shoulders over. I plan to call my representatives. Like, I plan to be informed in my vote. I plan to go to town halls and talk to candidates, and it's, tell them how important this is to me. And that this is going to determine how I vote, is how I protect myself. So
if I could
so
jump
many
in here
levels,
and
you have so much power.
If I could ask you to just maybe take a couple quick minutes, and then we'll try to grab a couple more emails from listeners, but a couple quick minutes to talk about where ultimately, if this really succeeds, where you want to go, which is on an international pause treaty. Here's Palantir, Palantir CEO Alex Karp said, the Luddites arguing that we should pause AI development are not living in reality and are de facto saying we should let our enemies win. Karp said, quote, if we didn't have adversaries, I'd be very much in favor of pausing AI completely. But we do have adversaries, and we can't. That's Alex Karp from Palantir. So let's work through that. The adversaries in individual companies, that could be one thing, but you hear the Trump administration saying we're not going to let China win. So if you get this international treaty, I'm looking through your website, and I appreciate all the specifics here, and listeners can find it there if you want to go to the the PauseAI website, Holly, not to be confused. But work people through what this treaty would do here.
Well, so we have I think you're referring to like our proposal,
Yeah.
but so the proposal is there basically to establish feasibility and to educate people. Like, this is one way that it could happen. But I want to emphasize there are a lot of ways that we could achieve a pause. I think there are many ways that we could slow down progress, or that we could deny companies the resources that they need to build AI in a way that is, there's many ways we could prevent both people following the law and people skirting the law, if we set a law, from still continuing to build. So the one we suggest is hardware control. And as I said earlier in the hour, hardware it's a very shaky supply chain, a single supply chain. It's very complicated to make. And a lot of it is needed. And every next level of AI training, more and more is needed. And so also it's very easy to tell who has hardware, because when you're doing a big training run, it's visible from space, the heat that it's generating. The data centers are visible from space. So I wish I could show an image right now of one of the data centers, the OpenAI Stargate ones in Abilene, Texas, with a football field next to it that just looks like a little dot. You can see these things from space. It's really, you can't hide them. So people worry that, a criminal could just make superintelligence. Like, well, yes, but it would be against the law. There's lots of things that are against the law because people want to do them, and we stop them. We have enforcement. So if there were a treaty that we want a global treaty, and it would not be a global treaty if China did not agree. And a treaty is not just trusting somebody's word. A treaty involves verification mechanisms. And there are so many, like
you say, like the IAEA.
Well, that's one possibility. Yeah. So there could be an agency like the IAEA or CERN, so nuclear research is dangerous. There's an international institution that is the one that is allowed to do that kind of research. And there's international input on whether it is safe. And a little bit of a throwback, but when I was in high school, there was an experiment at CERN that made some people think there could be a black hole created, and CERN took that very seriously, and they got it down to 10 to the negative 26 that it was even possible. And that's the level of certainty that I would like about AI research. I don't know that it's impossible. Maybe it is, but I think it's possible that we could have a centralized, everyone on Earth, every political entity on Earth has some input and oversight and the ability to check the others. And then possibly we can proceed safely from there. There are so many versions of this, and we suggest, possibilities just so people can understand how it could work. But really, it's down to the government's negotiating. So, we're not we're not married to any particular language, and we want there to be the democratic input of all of the negotiators into whatever happens. Also, something not our biggest desire is that the world agrees to pause, and it agrees to have a very high standard of safety, so scientific consensus that the next step could be done safely, and democratic buy-in about, what it'll do to this world or the risk that's being taken.
Well, let me just jump in because we're down to our last minute here. And John wrote in to say a long email to basically say thank you to Ms. Elmore for what she is doing and discussing and vigorously debating. While a valuable tool like all tools, perhaps we need to have humanity slow down using this tool to keep people safe. And he says, I did not use ChatGPT to write this email. Thank you, John. And Alex, briefly, take the last 30 seconds. Alex wants to know, are you kind of selling out on the future? Alex wants to know if you're not going to have kids because you think there won't be an American future or a world future. Are you that pessimistic, Holly?
I want kids because I plan to live. We're going to win. That's what I think. But this is the way we win. We don't win by just letting AI happen. We win by deciding what to do with our future.
Thank you for making the time. And online, we're going to put the links to PauseAI's website so people can check it out, can read more about it, maybe get in touch with Holly and the team if you'd like to do that about what's happening here. And let's talk again in the future. These things are moving so fast, Holly, and I hope you'll come back and update us on what's going on.
I'm sure I'll have a lot more to say. Thanks for having me.
Holly Elmore, founder, executive director of PauseAI US. More connections coming up in just a moment.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.